What was your favorite clip from last night?
I think my favorite was I forget their names off the top of my head, but the gun couple, the couple that got famous for pointing guns
Oh,
at
yeah.
people, who managed to go on there and talk about what victims they are, and how
And a lot of
things are so hard because they're being persecuted.
and a lot of racist dog whistling as well. I will say that their clip, it was funny and I was laughing, but there was one part in particular which was pretty racist when they were talking about zoning laws and how they were worried about crime coming in if they ended single home zoning in the
Right.
suburbs. That this would destroy the suburbs, and that this is, I mean, it's actually, I would say, rather ironic that now is the time when the Republicans really start leaning into the suburbs, and the way that they're doing it is leaning into single home zoning. And it's ironic, of course, because right now is, of course, the time when Democrats are sweeping the suburbs. That's how they picked it up in 2018. Right, that was how they won. The Democrats in many respects already got the suburbs, and right now in terms of polling, Democrats are winning the suburbs more than any other time, at least in modern political history. So it's pretty insane that right now, of course, is the time that Republicans decide to try to double down on trying to pick up the suburbs, and the way that they're doing it is by focusing in on single home zoning laws and things like that. That, oh well, they want to destroy your way of life, that they want to destroy the suburbs, and this is how they're doing it. But the weird thing about it is this sort of racist dog whistling is exactly why they're losing the suburbs, because the suburbs are higher educated voters, and even though there's obviously still racists and stuff like that, they don't want to be seen as racist. And that's why I think that the McCloskey, I believe is how you say their name, I might be
Right.
pronouncing it wrong, I don't mean to disrespect in terms of just saying their name wrong, but that's why I think that they're actually quite interesting. So I've actually I'm pulling up here them and sort of their segment, and you see them there. Last time, of course, when we saw them, they were in their, they looked wild-eyed. They looked like they were in the Wild West, right? They had their guns pointing out. But now we're seeing them all dressed up. We're seeing
Right.
the racists dressed up. We're seeing them in their mahogany room. They look presentable, right? And so I think that this was strategic. This was not, I don't think, an accident that they looked this way, and the kinds of messaging that they are the ones that they are the ones to bring out this particular message. So you want to take a look at this video, Chris? You want to watch it?
Yeah, let's do that. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
We're speaking to you tonight from St. Louis, Missouri, where just weeks ago you may have seen us defending our home as a mob of protesters descended on our neighborhood.
America is such a great country that not only do you have the right to own a gun and use it to defend yourself, but thousands of Americans will offer you free advice on how to use it. At least that's what we experienced. What you saw happen to us
Yeah.
could just as easily
Yeah,
happen
because
to
she doesn't
any
know
of
how to
you
use it.
Right. They were yeah, exactly. They offered
who are
advice
watching
because you
from
were
quiet
using it wrong.
neighborhoods around our country. And that's what we want to speak to you about tonight.
That's exactly right. Whether it's the defunding of police or encouraging anarchy and chaos on our streets, it seems as if the Democrats no longer view the government's job as protecting honest citizens from criminals, but rather protecting criminals from honest citizens. Not a single person in the out-of-control mob you saw at our house was charged with a crime. But you know who was? We were. They've
Yeah, because you
actually
pointed your
charged
gun at
us with
people.
felonies
Yeah, you
for
committed
daring
crimes.
to defend our home. On top of that, consider this. The Marxist liberal activist leading the mob to our neighborhood stood outside our home with a bullhorn screaming, "You can't stop the revolution." Just weeks later, that same Marxist activist won the Democrat nomination to hold a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. In the city of St. Louis, that's the same as winning the general election. That Marxist revolutionary is now going to be the congresswoman from the 1st District of Missouri. These radicals are not content with marching in the streets. They want to walk the halls of Congress. They want to take over. They want power. This is Joe Biden's party. These are the people who will be in charge of your future and the future of your children.
They're not satisfied with spreading the
All right,
chaos
hold
and
on.
violence
I want
into
to
our
pause it real
communities.
quick after he finished talking there, because after this, it actually gets a little bit more serious, because what she starts to say now is truly like racist dog whistling to the point where it's almost not even a dog whistle anymore. It's just a straight up whistle.
Yeah.
It's really, this is where she starts talking about single home zoning. So, I'm laughing and all, but this is where it really starts, I think, getting much more serious.
They want to abolish the suburbs altogether by ending single-family home zoning. This forced rezoning would bring crime, lawlessness, and low-quality apartments into now thriving suburban neighborhoods. President Trump smartly ended this government overreach, but Joe Biden wants to bring it back. These are the policies that are coming to a neighborhood near you. So make no mistake, no matter where you live, your family will not be safe in the radical Democrats' America.
At this moment in history,
All right,
if
I'm
you
gonna
stand
all
up.
right, I'm gonna stop it after she finishes talking there, because what you just heard there was very racist. That's where it went beyond a dog whistle right there, saying that we're going to end that the Democrats want to end single family zoning, and that as a result, that means that crime and the like is going to come into a community. That's clearly just signaling how, other cultures, for instance, or people who are more likely to be immigrants or people who are more likely to be poor, are the people who are going to be possibly violating those rules, right? So the idea is, well, you end those requirements, and then it means that more minorities are going to come into your community. It's appalling, absolutely appalling, that a major political party in this country would have a convention and say something like that. So outright dog whistling, so outright human whistling at that point, racist whistling, white supremacist whistling at that point. It just needs to be pointed out just how clearly, just messed up this is. And again, right? This is, they're in this sort of mahogany room. They're all well dressed. They look very fancy. They're well put together. This is their target. This is their aim to go against the fact that Democrats are starting to win the suburbs, right? This is their response. Do you say, oh, well, the suburbs are getting destroyed, that the suburb way of life is going to be destroyed by the Democratic Party doing these things? They actually could. There really are things that the Republican Party could do if they wanted to win back the suburbs. They want to show that they are not actually a racist party. They want to show that, right? Because that's the concern, by the way, that a lot of people moving over to the Democratic Party have. They're like, well, maybe I agree with Donald Trump or at least the Republican Party on a number of policies, but I don't want to vote for a party that's considered to be racist or at least semi-racist, right? That's where a lot of people get off. They're like, I might agree with tax cuts, but I don't agree, So there are people like that. There really are people like that. I don't agree with those people, but those people do exist. And the Republican Party could try to target those people, but that's not what they're doing. They're trying to target back the suburbs by using racist dog whistling. And it's really, really disgusting.
Yeah, and this obviously they're coming at it from. I mean, if you listen to numerous of people speaking in the last few weeks, it's become obvious that's a talking point they have, which is let's try to, because I think it's becoming obvious to everyone that the suburbs are going to be becoming more diverse, right? So in neighborhoods that maybe not that long ago were largely white, I think you're going to start seeing more diversity in these suburbs, and I think they're trying to hit home at this to scare some people to say, well, it won't be white suburbs for very long, without coming out and saying that and trying to drum up people's fears. I mean, I know the zoning, in Southern California, housing prices are pretty crazy. They've been changing some zoning laws because people basically, like younger generations, can't afford to buy a house. So what they'll do is the grandparents who kind of don't need that big of a house anymore, or parents, I should say, they build a little house on the back for the parents to live in, and then the younger family, the children, like the son or daughter and their family, sort of take over the whole house, because when houses are $600, $700, $8,000 for a house, it's hard for each individual family to have their own house. So this is kind of a way where the parents can pass it down to at least one of their children, and they still all can live off of it for a while. So there are lots of reasons why this is an important thing in some areas where housing is just getting totally out of control. I mean, it's absolutely necessary that we can have these changes to voting laws so people can even sort of have a place to live in.
Right, and it is true that Republicans are opposing zoning laws that can, allow more people to move in, and they're linking it with very racist reasons. So where I live in Fairfax County, there was recently a debate about whether or not we're going to be extending sidewalks and lampposts around neighborhoods. Now, when Fairfax County sort of was booming during the sort of the 50s and the 60s, even into the 40s, sidewalks weren't necessarily particularly popular. Everyone basically had a car, right? And so it was very different. Whereas now, you have entire generations of people growing up in the community, and then suddenly can't afford to live in the place that they grew up in, right? Because housing is very expensive around here. And one of the solutions to that actually is sidewalks, right? Because sidewalks allow people to connect to places they may not necessarily need to have a car. And so it can make the area more affordable. Well, there's a lot of people who really, really oppose that stuff. And it's oftentimes conservatives because it can lower housing values. And the thing that really blew me away when I started learning about this is how not only is it connected to concerns of people like, they'll call in and complain about homelessness, right? Like when I was working in local government, people would call in and start complaining about homelessness, complaining that people would they would absolutely make up stories. Like we would I remember the first time this happened to me, there was a phone call about some people, a guy pooping in their yard, basically. And, over time, we began to realize that, they're literally just making this story up. And that just shocked me, that they would literally just make something up about the things that this particular person was doing. He was in a place where he was perfectly allowed to be, but they were claiming that he was coming into their pond and bathing and literally just making up stories because they wanted to get rid of him. And anyway, this stuff always ends up getting wrapped up with sort of racist sentiments as well, and it's an absolute mess. And the other thing is with light posts, for instance, right? So you'd think that putting up a little pole, right, a little post over the street wouldn't be controversial. Well, turns out it is, because it depends where it is, right? Because first of all, light pollution, and it can be annoying sort of near someone's house, right? And that's I understand, right? If you put a lamppost right in front of someone's window, I understand why, a few people might not be upset about it. But then there's people who claim that it just incentivizes crime, because by the way, the evidence is to the opposite, but they claim that means that people will be up late at night and they'll be doing drugs and they'll be around their home. And so the idea with putting in sidewalks is people claim that it means that there's going to be drug deals going on behind people's home. And it ends up just being a bunch of racist talking points, and you hear these people, and they'll literally talk they and their lifestyle, and it's do you realize what you're saying? But yeah, this is the stuff that you hear. Anyway, let's go through this video a little bit more.
For yourself and for the values our country was founded on, the mob, spurred on by their allies in the media, will try to destroy you. You've seen us on your TV screens and Twitter feeds. You know that we're not the kind of people who back down. Thankfully, neither is Donald Trump. President Trump will defend the God-given right of every American to protect their homes and their families. But more than that, Trump's vision for America is a country where you have an opportunity to work hard and build the life you dream of with a job you love, with your children being educated in great schools, in a community where your family can play in the backyard without fear, worship in a church without shame, and express your beliefs without retribution. Trump brought us the greatest economy our country had ever seen. The Democrats have brought us nothing but destruction.
When we don't have basic safety and security in our communities, we'll never be free to build a brighter future for ourselves, for our children, or for our country. That's what's at stake in this election, and that's why we must re-elect Donald Trump.
Yeah, so
I don't know. It just makes me sad that these individuals have become stars for basically doing something horrible, which is going around and pointing guns at people who were not endangering them in the first place.
Right. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Now, I do want to comment on one thing that the husband there said. Was his name Keith? I can't remember his name.
I forget his name, yeah.
Yeah, but the husband there, he made the point there talking about how Donald Trump had created this amazing economy. And
Right.
that's a point which the RNC kept going back to throughout the convention night, that Donald Trump had a great economy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And clearly that's the strategy which the Republicans were planning on running on pre-COVID. They were planning on running on the great economy, and honestly, it very well may have worked. Now the economy is bad because of COVID, but clearly this is an attempted strategy. They are still trying to run on the economy, the idea that Donald Trump is good with the economy. So it's this idea that, they know that they can't come around toting how it's a good time, right? They know that
Right.
that would just be out of touch. They can't do that. But they're trying to still sort of do that message by creating a kind of light at the end of the tunnel, and that is Donald Trump, right? Like Donald Trump knows how to handle an economy. So if you vote him in, once this COVID stuff clears up, he's going to bring the economy back roaring. Now, that's absurd. But that's the strategy, that's the messaging which the Republican Party is really trying to sort of hone in on. And I think that it is linked a little bit there to this idea of Beijing Biden that we mentioned earlier in the stream.